let's continue then, as you heard Pule alluding to that. While South Africans are still grappling with power cuts, the Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, has suggested the creation of another state-owned power utility to compete with Eskom. Well, is that the answer? And this is something that President Cyril Ramaphosa agrees with. For more reaction to this, I'm joined by energy analyst, Professor Samson Mampweri. Thank you, Prof, for your time and your insights here on eNCA. So the president says of this idea that it was first suggested by, quote unquote, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, and cites China as an example where this is being done, where more than one state-owned entity is active in the energy generation space, and says, the president, that this is the kind of future we should begin to imagine. Is it?
Good afternoon to Lasizwe and the viewers. Looking at the state at which we are in terms of the electricity crisis, I don't think we should be looking at things such as the establishment of new companies at this point in time. I don't think that is a solution to the problems that we have. Establishing the company itself, it could work in a very long-term basis, not at this point in time, because remember, they need to establish the company, they need to capacitate that particular company, they need to appoint the board, they need to make resources available to that particular company so that the company can start building new power stations. At this point in time, it's not even clear what power stations will they build. Will they build coal power stations? Will they build renewable energy power stations? With money from where? Because the fiscus is also constrained as things stand. So for me, that's a no-no at this point in time. We shouldn't even begin to start talking about something like that. We should be looking at what is it that we should be doing now to avoid load shedding in the next 3 to 4 months. And I expected the president to come out of that power station and brief the media on what is it that they're doing to avoid load shedding now in the next 3 to 4 months. Andre the writer indicated there that the system as it stands is unreliable. There are long-term plans. Yes, we see and appreciate those. And these things are easy to assess from the technical point of view on our side. We know what they're doing. You can calculate and we can tell you when are we going to get these 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts that Eskom needs. So government needs to come out clean and clear and say, we don't have a short-term plan, or here is our short-term plan. We need to ease the pressure on the grid like tomorrow. And that is what I'm not seeing, what I'm not hearing from either the president or any of the ministers or Andre the writer himself.
Yeah. But do you have any sympathy, Prof. Mampweri, of for the concern of placing all our energy generation eggs in one basket, a fragile basket at that, being Eskom? Because part of the motivation from what the president was saying about this prospect of a second SOE is that it would sort of deflect some of the risk, because the risk that we've faced from Eskom, and Eskom that is underperforming. So just from that logic that says deflect some of the risk, such that there's even competition between these SOEs for generation of and distribution of electricity, perhaps even at competitive prices.
Unfortunately, I don't. I disagree. We're already doing that through IPPs. As things stand, the REAP program is introducing that competition. As things stand, when we buy renewable energy, we're buying renewable energy and we also buying from the coal side of things. We've been buying from the coal side of things from IPPs. The challenge has been that there's nobody is financing coal as things stand because of environmental concerns. So I don't think there is that risk. And I would like to go back to 2019 when Minister Pravin Gordhan came up with that proposal of breaking Eskom down into 3 business units or 3 companies, generation, transmission, and distribution. That's what we were told. We were told transmission will be independent, and it will then introduce competition and stability through buying from IPPs or buying from a number of other companies that will be producing electricity. And that process has been delayed. Why it was delayed, only government can provide us with those answers. To say that we now need an Eskom 2.0, which will then compete with Eskom and IPPs. Taking from that example that we took how many years to break up Eskom into 3, it's not going to work now. We need a solution. We need short-term solutions now. Yeah. Maybe in another life that can work. Our situation is very different from China, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm struck lastly, Prof. Mampoli, I'm struck lastly by the fact that this idea of a second parastatal, and to be fair, they are not calling it Eskom 2.0. It just comes naturally to us in the media to coin such a phrase for such processes. But nevertheless, I'm struck by the fact that in his weekly newsletter, this idea in President Ramaphosa's newsletter, that is, this idea of a second parastatal doesn't feature. I mean, the newsletter spoke about the energy crisis at length and some of the interventions that are being made at the moment and some of the prospective solutions, and it doesn't come up. Is this, I don't know, let me put it this way. What are we to read into that? Is this a sign of, I don't know, being punch drunk in terms of trying to get a handle on this crisis that keeps manifesting no matter what interventions government says they are making? Is it being punch drunk policy-wise, at least?
The way I read it, I see government panicking because people are tired of load shedding. People are putting a lot of pressure on the president using load shedding and the various ministers. And sometimes when you listen to them, Pravin Gordhan talks past Mantashe talks past Pravin Gordhan, because they are in a state of confusion, in my view, because they don't have a plan. The president talked about a crisis committee. In my view, that crisis committee, there must be terms of reference for that crisis committee. And one of the main issues in the crisis committee, it should be development of a short-term plan on how do we ease the pressure on the grid. How do we get kind of a visual power station for Eskom while we are still implementing the country's energy plan, which will only give us the additional generation capacity in the next 2 to 3 years. What are the other interventions that we can bring on board? So that crisis committee should be seized with that, and it should produce a document within a month or 2 that says, this is our plan, our short-term plan, and this is how much it's going to cost. These are the interventions that we have investigated within a month, and this is how much the National Treasury is putting on board, is bringing on board for us to implement this short-term kind of a solution. Until we get to that point, we will be coming up with all sorts of ideas, some of which will be basically political. I mean, a new company can only start operating in the next 4 to 5 years. By the time this new company starts operating, we'll be having enough generation capacity. We don't need that.
You think so? You're very optimistic. I've got to leave it there, Professor Samson Mampoli. Just lastly, as you talk about this whole issue of short-term solutions, one of the ones that we were looking forward to was this whole idea around power ships. It's July now. We were told that they would be ready by August 2022. That was the initial announcement. But anyway, let's leave it there because I'm completely out of time. We can engage on it in future. That's Professor Samson Mampuele there, who is an energy analyst weighing in on some of the solutions that are being suggested around our power crisis.